Thank you. I see it's 1:29, so let everybody have time to get settled in their seats. That's 1:29. Oh, it's interesting. The time we have on your computer and the time I have on my phone are different by 2 minutes. So that's why I'm waiting.
Ooh.
My phone is right. It says 1:29. I didn't want to start early. I wanted to give everybody time to get settled in, and I see we have another board member here. Thank you, everybody, for being here this afternoon on this Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. The Napa Valley Transportation Authority Board of Directors Tax Agency Board Meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's exactly 1:30. Do we have any remote participation?
We do not.
Thank you. Laura, would you go ahead and go with roll call? Start roll call.
Leon Garcia,
Here.
Mark Joseph,
Here.
Donald Williams, Kevin Eisenberg,
Here.
Liz Alessio,
Present.
Scott Sedgley, Alfreda Pedroza, Ryan Gregory, Paul Doring, Annie Shuto,
Here.
Margie Moeller,
Here.
Robin McKeecan.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Excellent. And I see that Director Paul Doring is coming in, so we can go ahead and show that Director Doring is here. Moving on to item 4, which is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda? And if we don't, do we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda, Garcia.
Motion by Garcia,
I'll second.
second by Shuto. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That's unanimous. Thank you. Item 5 is public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment either here in chambers or online? Not seeing any in chambers in the boardroom. Very good. And none online?
We do have one hand raised. My apologies.
We have a hand raised? Okay, perfect. Oh, Justin.
Justin,
Okay.
go ahead. You've been unmuted.
I'm looking. My name is Justin Ho. Live in American for 35 to 38 years. I want to make a comment. Earth Day is coming up, and see Napa will be starting Earth Day Saturday, and Sunday is at American. So join out there, and hope I can come down with my dog on Sunday. And the other thing is, I hope we will be looking at new bus hopefully soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. It's nice to hear from you, and we'll see you at Earth Day. Any other public comment? Not seeing any, and nobody else online. We'll move on to item 6, which is chairpersons and board members update. I don't have an update. Any board members? Not seeing any. Moving on to item 7, which is the executive director update. Executive Director Miller, do you have an update for NVTA-TA? Okay, no update. Moving on to consent items, there's 2 items, consent 1 and 8.1 and 8.2. 8.1 is the meeting minutes from the March 2024. 8.2 is a resolution that will change the time of our meetings from 1:30 to 1 o'clock to accommodate a couple board meetings that happen that kind of cross over this time. So we want to try to keep our board of directors here for the entire meeting if possible. So we're changing that back to 1 p.m. Is there, there's no changes or comments or pulling consent items. Do we have a motion and a second to approve the consent?
I'll make that motion, Joseph.
Joseph made the motion.
Second,
Second by Sedgley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Thank you. That passed unanimously.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
Chair Alessio, I did have one announcement that should actually, I thought I had put it on my long list, but I wanted to make it announcement at this meeting. That is that the last two jurisdictions who were acting on Measure U have both approved it. So all 6 jurisdictions have now acted, and we'll bring the item back to you at the May 22nd meeting for sharing with you the changes that were made on the expenditure plan and on the ordinance for the board's consideration for approval.
Thank you for that. I was thinking of that. I wasn't sure if you're going to mention that now or at the next meeting. Do we have any comments or questions for the executive director on that? And if not, just a big yay? Okay, thank you.
And a huge thanks to you and Vice Chair Mark Joseph for the work that you did on this. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you, Kate, and your staff and everybody for accommodating us on your very busy council agendas. And it was really eye-opening to see how each city and town, how their councils operate and the dynamics. And I was impressed with each and every one. And it was really fun and interesting too. So thank you for your support, everybody. Moving on to item 9.1 is a presentation from the NVTA staff and EMC research staff on the sales tax feasibility survey results. This is informational. And let's see, who's going to present this? I'm sorry. Oh, perfect.
That's very quick.
I thought, oh, yes. We was
Ready.
right through this one,
Right here.
right through. We've done this in 10 seconds, I think.
Well,
Probably former Chair Pedrosa has done this in 10 seconds. But we're really glad you're here. Please announce your name, and I'm sure you're with EMC, so. thank you.
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Labatt. I'm a senior principal with EMC Research. We're a Oakland-based national survey research and opinion research firm. You may remember me from being here last year with our initial survey results, and I'm here today to present to you results from a survey that we just completed in April to track support for a potential revenue measure, renewal measure for NVTA. Next slide, please. So the survey that we conducted, the methodology was identical to the prior survey that was conducted in 2023. It was a hybrid online and telephone survey of likely November 2024 voters. The survey was conducted March 10th through 17th, so just about a month ago. We did 600 interviews with a random sample of likely voters in the county. So as we look at the countywide data, the margin of error is about 4 percentage points plus or minus on each of the questions in the survey. And broadly speaking, you can just think of a bar that goes 4 points above and below the number you see here. And that's the number we would get should we be able to talk to every single voter, likely voter in the county. The interviews were conducted in both English and Spanish with trained professional interviewers for the phone interviews, and also using both landline and mobile phones to ensure we get a random and representative sample of voters. As I mentioned, we conducted an earlier survey for you back in June of 2023 that was with the same, modeling the same electorate of November 2024 with the same sample size margin of error, and all of our approaches and methodologies were the same to ensure that we could compare the data over time from last year to this year's survey. Next slide, please. A quick look, a snapshot of the voters in the county. This is what we think is a likely voter turnout scenario for November. Obviously, the actual voter turnout scenario is based on actual turnout, but this is based on our experience, what we've modeled this, this poll and these election results and electorate after. Next slide, please. Ooh, much better. Thank you. So an overall view of the findings from this survey, and then I'll walk through the data that supports this. First of all, we see that voters in Napa County generally feel things are going well in the area, and they do express strong support for continuing to pay taxes for high quality roads and traffic congestion reduction. On this measure, 4 in 5 voters in an uninformed initial ask say they would vote to approve the transportation sales tax renewal for the county. The voters in the city of Napa are just as likely to support the measure as those outside the city of Napa, even when we inform them that there could potentially be a measure on the local Napa city ballot as well about a potential sales tax measure. Voters do continue in Napa County to prioritize the importance of pothole and road repairs, traffic congestion relief, pedestrian cyclist safety improvements, as they did when we did the poll back in 2023. We also feel it will be critical to emphasize and continue emphasizing this measure does not increase taxes, but rather it maintains taxes, as well as talking about the accountability components that are built into a measure like this and the access this measure can provide to matching funds that will come into the county for projects. Also consistent with the polling that we did last year, we do see this measure showing some vulnerability to negative messaging around the duration of the tax, the borrowing mechanism, right? As a renewal and not an increase, really what we see is potentially a lot of discussion around the mechanics of it, is not necessarily a favorable environment, and rather, what they're interested in is continuing to fund traffic congestion relief and pothole repair with the same taxes that they are paying now at the same rate. Next slide, please. So then running through the data that supports this, first of all, this is a question we ask in most of our polls. Do you feel that things in Napa County are generally going in the right direction or pretty seriously off on the wrong track? We asked this back in 2023 as well as in this poll, and you can see things are a little bit more positive with the electorate. This is a question that we really find helps us understand if the electorate in a jurisdiction is sort of going to be in a generally positive and accepting mood versus an electorate that's going to be inclined to reject the things put in front of them. And we see with 65% right direction, 32% wrong track in this poll as compared with 58 right direction, 38 wrong track in the last poll. It's a fairly positive environment in Napa County in this electorate at this time. Next slide.
Doug, you for a question, or would you prefer at the end?
I think I'd prefer the end if you don't mind,
Okay.
just so that we can get through all the slides, and then I'm happy to take all of your questions. Maybe just note the slide number if that makes it easier to come back. Tax attitudes, a couple of questions about their opinions about taxes and their assessment of whether they're sort of worth the thing that they pay for. You can see the vast majority of voters here in Napa County agree that quality roads and transit are important, even if it means maintaining current tax levels. We do see that about a third of voters say they'd oppose any tax measure. And certainly that's something to be aware of, and it certainly is true across every jurisdiction. In this case, because you are asking about a continuation of a tax amount, not an increase in tax amount. We really focus these to be about maintaining tax levels and their feelings about the benefits that they could get from continuing this tax to continue funding high quality roads and traffic congestion relief. Next slide, please. Now here we show the measure itself. It's written there, the draft measure that we worked with your staff to draft is in the gray box at the top. This is the same text that we tested both in 2023 and in this poll. We did not make any changes. And this text does fulfill what we believe are the legal requirements for a revenue measure. It meets all of the necessary language around a clear description, the rate, the term, the annual revenue collected, and it's within the 75-word limit that is required for tax measure or for revenue measures or any measures really on California ballots. So written there, without raising taxes, shall the Napa Valley Transportation Authority implement an updated transportation expenditure plan to repair roads and improve highways, fix potholes, reduce traffic congestion, improve evacuation routes, make transit more affordable for veterans, senior students, and people with disabilities, and make biking and walking safer by continuing its 1/2 cent transportation sales tax with no increase, providing $25 million annually for 30 years with citizen oversight and all funds dedicated to serving transportation needs in Napa County. So when we read them that question early in the poll before we've given them any more information, we see on the right, the current poll, 81% say that they would vote yes to support that measure as read. 18% said they would vote no. A very small sliver is in that undecided category. Very similar to what we heard back in 2023 to the same question. So one of the big things we think about is, has anything shifted from the earlier polling we did to now that you should be aware of in terms of what's sort of underlying support is or current support for a measure. And we see it's very similar to what we learned back in 2023. Next slide, please. We wanted to show the breakout of this vote by the various incorporated jurisdictions. This is by city of incorporation. We combined Calistoga, St. Helena, and Yountville because the the sizes of the electorates and thus the sample sizes out of 6,000 are fairly small. And we wanted to not give you something based on too small to be reliant on. But we see that support is pretty broad-based across all of the jurisdictions in the county. The percentages that follow the names of the jurisdictions is the percent of the electorate that falls into that jurisdiction. So we expect in this election about 56% of the voters in the November election will be City of Napa residents, et cetera. So you can see that support is strong really across all jurisdictions. This is a 67%, right, a 2/3 measure. We're at 81% in the overall countywide at the top, and then you see support in Up County at 91%, 79% in the City of Napa, 82% in American Canyon, and 81% in the unincorporated areas of the county, which are spread, throughout the county, not all in one area. But certainly strong support across the county. We also did, as part of this survey, read them a potential ballot question just for City of Napa voters that reflected what we believe the City of Napa is considering for a potential revenue measure for the November ballot as well. We read the entire text of their draft measure and we asked Napa voters, now that you've heard that, how would you feel about supporting the Napa Valley transportation measure? We did not see any change in their support levels before or after. We did it in the order it would appear on the ballot, which the county measure would come before the city measure because they do it in order of size of jurisdiction. So we tried to essentially replicate the ballot exercise for only the City of Napa voters with both of those measures, and then came back to ours to really understand, do they sort of see both of these and say, well, I'm not sure I should support both. And we don't see a difference in how Napa City voters feel about the NVTA measure after they hear the City of Napa's measure. Next slide, please. Next in this survey, we asked them about some various components of the measure. Some of these are included in the text of the ballot question, literally exactly how we asked them, and others aren't. And we're just trying to understand sort of are the voters most interested in seeing their tax dollars in a measure like this go. We can see repair roads and fix potholes far and away the most compelling piece, the thing that the voters are most interested in hearing that this measure will go to handle. In addition, we see others which are not unimportant, but next to 91, it's hard to say they don't look as important, but certainly improve highways to reduce traffic congestion or just reduce traffic congestion, right? Either way you say it, it's about the outcome. Redesigns of the intersection of Highway 29 and 12 to improve traffic, increase safety, enhance evacuation routes, improve safety on routes to schools for children and families, making biking and walking safer. We did put a little side box here with the results from last year's. We did make some tweaks in the language, so we didn't want to give the direct bar comparison, but you can see the order is essentially the same. It was potholes and then repair roads and improve highways, which we've sort of put together at this point, and then reduce traffic congestion, and then Highway 29, and then safety. So very similar priorities with the voters now as what we saw back in 2023. Next slide, please. This is a continuation of the same set of questions. They were all read in a randomized order and sorted on these slides in the order of importance. So you can see some other components still important to a majority of voters. And as you get down to more specifics and ones in more specific areas of the county that are maybe narrower appeal, we see slightly smaller audiences being compelled by these, but certainly a lot of things they're interested in a potential measure funding. And recognizing that support for the measure is quite high, we see people saying, well, I want, a lot of those things that you're asking me about, including lots of different types of projects, greenhouse gas emissions, transit service, et cetera. Next slide, please. After we gave them the projects, we did ask them, sort of give them a set of information that is the type of information that NVTA can deliver in the context of preparing for a revenue measure. So these aren't meant to be advocacy style messages, but rather they are pieces of information that talk about what the measure could do, what would happen if the measure were to succeed, to help understand what the outcomes are if this measure is placed on the ballot and should be able to pass. So you can see some of the most compelling ways to sort of talk about and provide information about the measure, emphasize, matching funds and oversight. So I think one thing to know is because this is not an increase, but rather it's a sustaining of the current tax levels, really talking, to the degree that they want to hear about the mechanism, it's really what can it do for us that's more than what we're getting now. And I think some of the matching opportunities that sound like they'd be possible is certainly compelling, as well as making sure you're talking about how the money from a measure like this is strongly controlled. It's only going to go to what you're saying it's going to go to. Talking about how the measure is not increasing taxes, but just extending the current sales tax rate, but updating the transportation expenditure plan, right? Those two really kind of go hand in hand. And then we see messages that are really focused on the outcomes in transportation, making walking and cycling safer, right? And we build some more framework around what does walking and cycling safety for kids and families mean and what that entails. We do see it comes up a little bit stronger. People are interested in projects like that. Pothole repair we know is compelling. You don't really have to explain what it means, I think is what this says to me. It's so compelling just saying pothole repair. You don't really have to go into a lot more detail. They get it and they are strongly interested. Next slide, please. This is a continuation again of the same set of questions that were asked in a randomized order. These are sorted by the percent convincing or very convincing. And you can see some of these others are still compelling. Reducing traffic congestion by improving highways and intersections. You see making communities safer in emergencies. We're right about at that 2/3 threshold now in terms of what information, how compelling these pieces of information are. It doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't do all the things you need to do with this measure. This just helps you sort of think about what are the pieces of information your electorate, your public is the most interested in hearing about as you approach a decision to potentially place a measure on the ballot. Next slide, please. So once we give them sort of all of the potential types of projects, as well as all of those pieces of information, remember you started at 81. I hope you're not too disappointed that you weren't able to grow that vote past really that 81% level. That's a very high bar. And I think what this says is that, yes, there's a lot of information you can provide and certainly help the voters understand why you might be placing something on the ballot. But we see that the measure is well supported really on the face of it. And the ballot question itself, I believe, describes the things that we have learned in the rest of the poll that they are interested in. So providing more information, while it's something that you should and are obligated to do as a public agency, we're not seeing that there's some magic key information that makes a big difference. Rather, it's reassuring to them and lets them maintain that vote for a potential measure. Next slide, please. So finally, we did test a potential vulnerability for the measure. It's written there in the gray box. It's a pretty broad-based opposition talking about how there already is a tax. This is changing it, more in interest. It extends the tax. And it talks about that there might be other measures on the ballot that address other critical topics. So a pretty general sort of anti-tax kind of message. And we do see vulnerability here. The vote, which started at 81 and then went to 82. When we read just this one general opposition, does drop to 56% support, 42% oppose. So certainly something to be aware of as a board, important to know. But also, recognizing that a lot of the public is very interested in the outcomes that you are potentially proposing with this type of measure. That's important to weigh in as well. That is my last slide, and maybe for ease, or you could go back to slide 4 because that was sort of the findings summary, and then I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. That was really interesting. And really worth going out there and getting this information and presenting it to us all. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Vice Chair Joseph.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and doing the survey. The first question I had was back on the right track, wrong track.
Sure.
And it seems like people think things are getting better, and that's always encouraging. But I'm wondering how much of that do you think is Napa specific versus a kind of a national generic feeling that inflation's starting to settle and things are maybe getting better, so that we're really just kind of a benefactor or a victim of the national scene?
A great question, and I think it's probably some of both. This isn't, we didn't ask them getting better, getting worse. We asked right direction, wrong
Oh,
track, which it's a little different. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
parse
No,
words,
that's
but
true.
and it's not the same people, right? So they don't know how they answered. But I would say that you're not wrong to hypothesize that some of it probably is locally based, some of it probably is state and nationally based. It's not really possible from poll results to predict where that's going to go. We
Right.
do know that generally, the more positive an electorate is in a jurisdiction, if someone in that jurisdiction is asking for a revenue renewal or a revenue increase, they are going to look on it more favorably generally. They'll also look on incumbents more favorably if they're up for election, right? Sort of a good mood translates. I would say that when we ask this question, the larger the jurisdiction, the more negative it is. Generally, there are counties with much worse numbers than this in California, including in the Bay Area. Meaning voters in Napa don't see a lot going on locally when we ask them about the county of Napa, where they say, well, everything here is terrible. In other counties, we do see certainly a much softer number. And when we ask about the Bay Area, I would say I haven't done that right this second in the Bay Area, but it's probably close to 50-50. When we ask about the state, it's more like 30 something wrong direction, 50 or 60 something wrong track. And we see this consistently, that the smaller and more local the jurisdiction is to the voter, the more likely they are to say, well, things are good here, if indeed things are good there. So I think you're not wrong. And there's some that's in your control, I think is what you're implying. And then there's lots of things that aren't. The presidential election, whatever's happening with the state and the budget, whatever's happening with the economy, there's not a lot you're going to be able to do to control that. But we do see just a generally more positive tone now than we did last year.
Well, good. And then the other question I had is we were getting into the top measure components. The last one was the five-way intersection.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, do you have numbers that just look at Napa City only? Because in many respects, that might be relevant to Napa City residents versus other jurisdictions. So that would be one question, whether or not there's a way to be able to say people in Napa proper think this is a much higher priority than, say, someone from Calistoga or American Canyon.
Yeah, yes is the answer. The jurisdictions we showed you, so the city of Napa, American Canyon, the sort of 3 up county and unincorporated, we can provide crosstabs for all of them. I would say, if you're talking about the last one on this page here about Silverado, Hillsville, et cetera, even in the city of Napa, it was among the lowest ranked projects. In Napa, as in all of the jurisdictions, pothole repair is by far at the top. And in most regions, it's followed by traffic congestion relief. So we're happy to provide the full cross tabs for cities. So you can see all of that data.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that question. I was thinking along the same lines in terms of specifics for the city of Napa. Yes, Director Doring.
Yeah, thank you. My question has to do with the ballot statement, the ballot question itself. So if you can maybe go to that slide.
It's back one more
Back.
slide, I think.
It may be a question for
Two.
staff. I'm not sure, but I'll ask the question anyway. So I find it intriguing and kind of interesting.
No, oh, mine does say 9. Go back a little bit farther. Sorry, one more. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
That we start out with, and I don't know what the genesis of this is, but we start out with without raising taxes. And I would just observe that for many people, the word raising could be taken in a more colloquial sense, a more sort of the connotation is without relying on taxes as opposed to increasing taxes. And I'm just wondering why there was a choice of the word raising versus increasing, and whether you think that had, obviously it's a tax, I get that. But when folks, that first impression they get in an interview is without raising, seeking or relying on taxes is the way I would construe that, and not necessarily without increasing taxes. Do you think there's any effect there, or is it minute? And I that's pure speculation. And then I guess the second question is just out of fairness to our voters, is that the language we want to use, or maybe we need to drill down a little bit more on that? And is it potentially legally problematic to use the word raise as opposed to increase? Yeah.
So we worked with our consultants to draft the ballot language and then had it reviewed by Deanne, our prior legal counsel. And a lot of the language was tweaked specific to concerns that she had. But the word raise and the word increase are really quite different. Increase, I think increase, we are, we are extending the measure 12 years. That would be an increase. Whereas this is not raising the sales tax increment. And maybe that was the distinction. I can't speak for her, but that would be my assumption.
Thank you. Let's see, Director Pedrosa, you have a question or
Yeah,
comment?
just on that note, whatever the attorneys bless, I think we should feel comfortable if they did provide that counsel. So look, I've seen many polls and I've never seen recent polls be as positive as this. So I think the fact that we're seeing this type of movement going from 79 to 81, I think that is something that we should all be very proud of and Napa should be very proud of. What I keep thinking about is the measurables, the outcomes that our residents want to see. So from the polling, what type of messaging should we be focusing on as this shifts to a different campaign? Any insights on that?
I would say for the public agency, it's, I would recommend starting with the kinds of information we gave in this poll around slide 11, which was sort of where we were talking about sort of additional information. And so I think it's sort of two tracks. One is really about how much good this can do without increasing the tax rate in the county. I do think that that's a really critical piece of information that NVTA can be delivering, that we can do a lot of great things without it costing you more than you're paying now for those things. And then I think the other track is what those things are. And I think you see here, safety, pothole repair on the very next slide, really the next item is traffic reduction. So really kind of the three-legged stool, I think, on the project components that are the most important to voters are pothole repair, traffic, and safety. And safety really for all users, bike, ped, as well as vehicle drivers, et cetera. And then I think it's making sure you're also reminding them that this is an opportunity that you have to get additional money for the county with matching funds, to not increase their taxes when you do it, bring better updated program of road repair, safety, and traffic relief to Napa County. And you can do all of that without raising their taxes. So that's my recommendation on certainly where to start as the NVTA. And I think probably where should this measure move forward and should there be a private organization, privately funded campaign, that I would think that that's what they would do.
Got it. No, I appreciate that. And again, I think what an incredible opportunity to really have this moment where you're not increasing taxes. It's a continuation and continue to make investments, not just in fixing potholes, but some of the regional projects that we're all going to be able to do. And I've said this, I think we've all heard American Canyon say it multiple times. It's not just an American Canyon problem, it's a regional problem. Well, guess what? This does that. This gives us an opportunity to address these regional issues that impact our workforce, whether we're going to and from, errands or those that are fortunate enough to visit at Napa Valley. I just think this measure does a lot. And there's accountability measures in it. I think it's going to be up to us as electeds to make sure that we're out there telling the story of we need to continue to fix those potholes and we got to make sure we're making roads safer, but we're also managing expectations of what this will do. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I want to make a comment on that. And I'm going to ask a member, Director Shuto, to ask her question. And I think that goes back, Sarah, I think that goes back to Vice Chair Joseph's question about the specific cities. Napa County, though small, each jurisdiction is very unique and has unique issues that are really confronting and frustrating our residents. For the city of Napa, it certainly is potholes is number one. The next would be safety for streets, and then it would be traffic would be down the road. If we were to break it down, I'd put my bet on that based on knowing this community so well. Up Valley, it's going to be more about fire evacuation or access. I'm guessing, I don't live up there, so I'll leave the Up Valley leaders to kind of address that. I think it's really important moving forward that we understand what the unique issues are so we can speak to those specifically to our communities throughout this county and the jurisdiction. And that's why that information per city, town, and county, the unincorporated area, is really important for us in terms of campaigning and getting the message across to what matters to folks. Director Shuto.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, so much. I had a question about that slide that you showed where you don't have to go back to it because I think I'll be able to articulate it. But if there's somebody that's being negative in general, just about any tax,
Mhm.
how big of a difference that can
Mhm.
make. So did you try out any questions or have any advice for us for what the message is that would be most effective against that particular negative overall criticism, no tax at all, not always based on facts? I'm thinking about how social media right now can really amplify an opinion and people aren't always reading the same local news. So I wanted to make sure that we're getting ahead of that and thinking through how we can have an impact, a positive impact.
I would, I have a couple thoughts on that. My first is knowing that there is a vulnerability in that area. For this group, the public agency, which cannot advocate, right? You can't say, you can't really campaign, right, as a public agency. But what you can do is tell the story that you have on why this is important, which I think your voters are saying very clearly that it is important. I think the other piece that is important to do before you place something on the ballot is to make sure that you are listening to your voters and your public across all parts of the jurisdiction to try to understand what might be driving some of that opposition and see if there's any way to come to some sort of, at least level sight about why this might be important to do. And to be able to do it without increasing taxes. You will notice that what we said was a very kind of general anti-tax statement. I think the best thing you have, when that comes up, is to say this doesn't increase taxes, right? And it pays for all these things. So, I would say that, you are not the campaign. You can't really fight in the direct way any opposition, but you can do as public servants what you can to bring people to the table, hear their concerns, help them understand why this is important to do, and make sure they understand this isn't increasing your taxes. I do think that's pretty much, one of the most important things to be talking about in informing the public about what this measure is and what it isn't.
Sarah, I'd like to just clarify that. This body is not paid by NVTA, so you may advocate as much as you'd like. It's staff, any funding associated with public revenues, and we cannot go out and advocate unless we are on our own personal time. So I just wanted to make that clear that you have the ability to do that and staff does not.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. And then we've got Director Williams.
Yes, thank you. To Director Doring's point, I think that we are vulnerable on that first phrase. When we say we're not raising taxes, the taxpayer is going to understand, looking at this, that he or she is going to be paying more taxes than if this had not been passed. And the rate is unchanged, but the amount of tax itself over the length of the years is going to be more. The amount of taxes being paid. So whether we call it a raise or an increase, there are more taxes being paid, and it's the rate that's not being changed. I think we're going to be vulnerable on that very first phrase.
Are you saying because even though it's a half cent, the cost of the things being taxed?
But just extended.
It's the
so many more
duration.
years.
I see.
So duration of the tax, also the duration of the benefit. So it's all how you look at it.
So, yeah, so there's the amount that the taxpayers, when we say there's without raising taxes, the rate is not being changed or raised, but the amount that the taxpayer pays in total is going to be greater or raised or increased.
So we're not going to change the language because we've gone through 3 polls with the same language. And your point made, and there will be arguments as part of the ballot that will probably clarify some things. And I know that we have to have a statement. And so Oz will look into specifically what he would have to say as part of that, and we will have that probably for you in May as well. But your point made, yeah.
Thank you. I think I have Director Pedrosa, and then we'll go with Vice
Yeah,
Chair.
I just think it's
Joseph?
critical that our attorney just responds to questions raised by the board around that terminology and put it in writing, right? I know Paul's an attorney, I'm not, so I don't want to pretend to be, but I think that's why we have counsel to guide us on these type of questions.
Right. So with regard to the use of raise versus increase, I will find out from Deanne, who's still in our office. So I'll confirm that. I've already got a note to try to figure out some of the rationale behind that. And with regard to Kate's statement concerning the neutral opinion that comes out, I will look at it within the contents of the concerns that are being raised here in terms of the different connotations of raise and increase in that perspective. So I'll address it from that angle as well. So hopefully have more to report to the board in May, if not sooner. So.
Thank you very much. And then we have Vice Chair Joseph.
Mostly just a comment. I do think that we need to be careful about being transparent, because as much as I think we should emphasize we're not increasing the rate, yes, we are extending it. And I suppose I'm not the best anti-tax spokesperson around, but in my personal view, I don't think it's that much to tell the voters that it's likely this is going to be a tax that'll be around for a long time. The good news is every time we want to extend it, we got to go back to the voters and get 2/3 of them to agree. And that's kind of the ultimate built-in accountability. You know, ITALKs and audits notwithstanding, going back to the voters saying, I think we did a good job, and if 2/3 of you agree, we'll keep the same rate and maybe add another 10 years or 5 or whatever in order to do more, bigger, better things. So I think we need to be honest about that and embrace it as a strategy that basically reinforces the accountability that's built into this whole, voter approval thing.
And
Thank
I
you.
would add, sorry, that the 30-year term is in the ballot question. It says for 30 years, continuing for 30 years. So I think it is fulfilling what you're asking, I believe.
Thank you, Sarah. And Director Gregory.
Thank you. I think it's important for us to keep an eye on the date at which this crosses the threshold and becomes a private thing where we can't use government resources anymore. Do we know what action that is or what date that might occur?
It'll be after the Board of Supervisors takes action, which is expected in June.
Sometime in June. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. And then I'm going to end it with this. I think everybody's had a chance who's wanted to say something. For me, this poll says two things. One, and most importantly, I think, is recognizing the hard work of the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, Tax Authority staff, our NVTA staff, because they've been talking and working and listening to each of the jurisdictions, from city managers to town managers to electeds, in terms of what they needed and how they wanted to modify it. And so working together in that collaboration and communication has really landed us on a measure that has such a high rating, in addition to the overall sentiment of our locals. So I commend everybody in that working together. So thank you for that. The last thing I just want to note, and this is probably very obvious, you made a really good point about the borrowing mechanism, the bonding mechanism. That is very confusing for everyone. And I think this was mentioned last night at City Council, it was requested that City Council receive a presentation from our city staff on what is a bond, how does that work? And so we have really good understanding, and then we can then go out and we can share that and create that community awareness, that community education, because I think that's the biggest hurdle myself. In terms of the folks who are just not going to support this, I will tell you, in my experience, there'll be about I'm going to throw out 24%, 25%, a quarter, who just won't change their mind. They just won't. And that's okay. That's their prerogative. They get to vote, and that's, bless them and bless us that we have this, we have this democracy here. But I think it's that gap between not the gap between those who are going to support this, are going to support it, is that middle range. It's that between that 26% to the 56% to get that threshold, So I think that's kind of where our work is going to be at, just based on observation and experience. Sarah, thank you so much for this. If you could follow up and maybe send staff kind of the breakdown per jurisdiction, so we
Yes.
kind of look at that, and staff can work on, along with our campaign, in terms of the messaging that we can provide to our different communities. It's
Yep.
been very helpful.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all.
Nice to see you too. Moving on to future agenda items, which is number 10. Do we need a public comment? I just need to ask for a public comment. Is there any public comment?
There's none online.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 10, future agenda items. Are there any items for the NVTA-TA requested for the next meeting? That will start at 1 o'clock? Okay, no. And by the way, that next meeting is going to be, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 2:14. And do know that the next meeting is going to be the fourth Wednesday, May 22nd, starting at 1 o'clock versus the third Wednesday, due to conflict with a conference that involves, I think it's Cal Cities, but it might be CSAC. So moving on to our NVTA agenda, still the 17th at 2:14. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Director Shuto, would you like to lead this for us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we still don't have any remote participants, correct?
We do not.
Correct. And roll call, can we stay with the same roll call?
Roll call was confirmed at the preceding NVTA Tax Authority meeting with the addition of our PCC representative, Deborah Smith. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Item 5, adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes for the agenda? And if not, do we have a motion and a second? Moved by Pedrosa, second by Joseph. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? That's passed unanimous. For the NVTA board meeting, do we have any public comment? Not seeing any in the boardroom. Any online? And none online. Okay, thank you. Moving to item 7, this is chairpersons, board members, MTC and ABAG update. I don't have an update other than I will say that I want to thank staff, the NVTA staff, and all who were able to attend the ribbon cutting. Executive director is probably going to include this in her update, but it was very well attended. I'm guessing 150 people, maybe more. And it was really exciting. I mean, the vibe and the enthusiasm and excitement, it was great, wasn't it, Grant? And it was just, thank you, staff. That's a lot of work to organize something like that. I've been on the other end organizing these kind of things, and those details make everything go smooth. So nobody even knows how much effort goes in there, but I know there's a lot of effort. So thank you for the entire NVTA team. That's just my short update. Do we have any other board member updates before we go to MTC and ABAG? Not seeing any. Okay, MTC. Director Pedrosa.
Thank you, Chair. It's been a very busy April at MTC. Starting with, I did ask staff that we have a workshop for MTC, and we're going to do that next week, I believe. We're going to be in the great city of San Jose. Apparently hosting an Napa too many retreats is not allowable. So we're going to go down to San Jose for that. And then at the commission meeting, we did certify the mitigated negative declaration for the Napa Valley Forward programs, the State Route 29 intersection improvements at Rutherford Road and Oakville Cross Road, which is a good milestone. And to the City of American Canyon, congratulations. They were recognized and received $1.3 million in the new One Bay Area grant funds. This is for approving, being in the top 15 jurisdictions for the most housing units being approved. And that was part of a program that we created at MTC. And it's part of thinking regionally, but also understanding that we got to think locally. We created a program that allowed smaller counties to be competitive and smaller cities to be competitive in the 9 Bay Area counties. And again, I think that was Commissioner Spearing that brought that up, and also Commissioner Rabbit was supportive of that from Sonoma County. So again, part of thinking like a region, but also bringing resources back home. We also approved $400,000 from the cap and trade carbon transit operations. We got $400,000 for MTC, for NVTA, for the zero emission buses. And a bill that's near and dear to my heart, because I've been spending so much time on it, 1031, the Wiener Wahab bill. This is to give MTC an opportunity to strengthen, our authority around transit operations. It's making a lot of transit operators very nervous, but I continue to believe that if you are on the Vine bus or on BART or on the ferry, we should have schedules that talk to each other, coordinate with each other. It's common sense. That said, I understand how that can make some operators a little uncomfortable. But as I told both BART and Muni, which are the biggest people movers in the region, we're in it together. We're not there to make their job harder, but the fact is we do need to make improvements for the riders, not the operators, not the politicians, the riders. And I know they're committed to that. If that is successful, we're working with having legislation that the state would authorize us to put a measure on the ballot in 2026. That could be sales tax, or it could be other financial mechanisms. Part of the issue that we need to tackle is the fiscal cliff. So that might take a big portion of it. Some folks believe the fiscal cliff is $750 million. Some believe it may be smaller, but we are working closely with Senator Wiener, who has been a great transit operator, around establishing some guardrails of, yes, we do need to keep our systems going, but we also need some forward-thinking initiatives that make transit more accessible, more convenient, and more reliable, to the point that we all would ride it with our parents and our kids. So that's been taking a lot of time. We also, at the Bay Area Housing Finance Authority Oversight Committee meeting, we did approve to put $20 billion bond measure on the ballot in November, and that's huge. That took a lot of work. It took a lot of courage from the elected leaders. I do want to give them credit for standing firm and believing that it was the right thing to do. It also is coupled with labor standards to ensure that we're getting people on these jobs from our region. And I'll give credit to the labor unions. They approach the table in a very collaborative way. There is discussions at the state level about doing more, but the commission, or the oversight committee, did do their job of advancing this and allowing the state to make changes if they need to do that. If this does go, we are going to be working, those of us that once we transition from this being able to be on the other side of campaigning, we hope that there's going to be a good coalition of affordable housing developers, that have been working very hard and been good partners to move this forward. So the next step for this is to go to the joint housing committees and the executive committee, and it should be approved in May. So it was hard to distinguish which meetings we were going to, transit or housing, because they were both big ticket items this month. But again, to some of these regional bodies, you often think about, what do you do to bring value back home? This is real stuff that's bringing real money into our community. You talk about $20 billion. I think for Napa County, for the housing, it was around $27 million that we would have access to. And
178.
there you go, even better. Round up big time, Mayor. The key thing about that was it would create its own bank, where you would be able to fund and create interest that generates its own bank for the housing region, which is what New York has done. Not that we want to be a bank, but to have a self-sustaining fund, kind of like the workforce proximity program that we do in the Valley. To be able to do that in our region is incredible. So again, when this comes to you, just think about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership and support. Appreciate. We know you have a lot to do with a lot of those things. Yes, Member Director Garcia.
Yes, thank you, Director Pedrosa, for your report on it and your involvement in assuring we can be successful. ABAC did take up that with the executive board on approving a Bay Area Housing Finance Authority board. It's to the tune of, as you pointed out, $20 billion. We did come up with also a component of our discussions on a labor agreement as well. not a PLA, but it's the laborers, the carpenters, as I understand, are in approval of it. So we're doing well in that regard. Into Napa, we get $178 million. Will be coming forward on it. And it's, as you described earlier, it's very well financed by the way of, you know, you can increase in increments by its use. So we'll have more discussion on this tomorrow, I expect, and in May as well. So it's looking very good. And we're very pleased to be able to utilize some of that money for the housing projects we're building in American Canyon. The Cove, as you see it on the highway there, a lot of people ask about that. It's 66 units. It's all low and very low income. It's workforce housing, basically. I had a owner of a restaurant who was complaining to me about with a big frown on his face on that's going to cause all kinds of traffic problems. And I said, yes, you're going to have more customers. And he brightened up. Oh, yes. Well, it's probably the width of this room from Canyon Cafe to Cove. You know, you're going to be walking next door. So we just need to assure from the city side we have a safe route. But yeah, that would conclude my report. And we're meeting again tomorrow with the guy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Director Garcia, for your support and leadership too. Do we have any other updates? I don't see any. So I'll go ahead and move on to our Executive Director update.
Thank you, Chair Alessio. On April 12th, as you pointed out, we had a ribbon cutting and a lot of you were there and we really appreciate your support. Senator Dodd was there. FTA Region 9 Administrator Ray Tellis was there. Chair Alessio joined them to cut the first ribbon. It was over 100 people. It was really a feel-good event and I want to thank the staff for making it so wonderful. So thank you, everybody. I attended the third Transit Transformation Task Force. Again, that's a statewide task force, and we met on April 15th, last Monday, in San Diego. The event included a ride-along on the MTS trolley, including an overview of the proposed extension to the airport. The task force focused on identifying availability standards and metrics for the state's transit system based on 3 broad categories: urban, suburban, and exurban, which is a new word for rural. The committee made a number of comments that regional and local knowledge was central to setting the standards given the varied demographics and geography of each area. So I'm not sure everybody's on the same page, but we're working towards it. Staff has been working with Bobby Puri of True Elegance Worldwide on airport service to SFO, which was just launched this week. The new service will be serving the Imola Park and Ride and the American Canyon Park and Ride stops. Parking is limited to 2 days in the Imola Park and Ride, so patrons should consider taking the Vine Transit bus to access the new service. And it's $65, right? $69. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission will receive $20 million to improve corridor resilience and prevent flooding impacts on a 10.4-mile section of State Route 37 by installing sheet pile walls, nature-based and engineered side slope reinforcement, and raising the profile grade at 2 segments. And the project is part of the larger corridor plan that will improve mobility, reduce emissions, and improve safety and public access, serving disadvantaged communities in Sonoma, Napa, and Solano counties, and Marin. NVTA staff participated in the Napa Valley College Career Day on April 16th. We were also notified that Napa Valley College students will finally be voting on a reduced fare pass subsidized by student fees. This has been another 10-year effort. And working with the new president, it has been really quite easy.
That's great.
NVTA will also help subsidize the program in anticipation of the increased student ridership. NVTA staff have been working on this for a long time, as pointed out. And we have verbal reciprocity agreement with the Solano Transportation Authority so that students that live in Solano that come here and students that live in Napa and go there, which there's a lot of that, will be able to get the same discount on our system. Staff will also be tabling at 2 Earth Day events in Napa on April 20th at Oxbow Commons, and I think in American Canyon. Yes, we resolved our little issue in American Canyon on April 21st at the Wetlands Edge. And we will also be tabling at the Napa Climate Summit on April 27th. And Chair Alessio will lead a ride with Councilmember Bernie Narvez to kick off Bike Fest and Napa Bike Cinco de Mayo ride, wearing one of our
you. Yes.
beautiful jerseys.
Thank you for the jersey.
Bike to Work School Day is on May 16th, so put it on your calendar and put your helmets on and ride to the NVTA's Energizer Station at the Vine Trail Soskel Gap, right at Vallejo and Mackenzie Streets. And then finally, NVTA staff will be attending the California Transit Association Legislative Conference on May 20th in Sacramento. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent report. Any questions for our executive director? Not seeing any. Okay, perfect. Moving on to Caltrans, which is item 9, and I see that Amani's absent. So we have Daniel Chang providing this update.
Hi, yes, good afternoon. In PID, we still have 2 projects in the initiation document. And then for the environmental phase, we have 9 projects. We haven't changed from previous month. And then in the design phase, we have some minor changes here. 2 big projects are actually going to be pushed out 19 months. So we're getting a time extension for June CTC. There are right-of-way issues on both projects and other issues that are hampering delivery of those 2 projects. On the construction side, which is the 3rd page, we do have a project that got awarded at the end of March. And so that's the Rumble Strip project, and that's in various locations in construction. And I guess I think 29 south of Soskel is one location. There's multiple locations for this project. 121 after the bridge north of Soskel, and then between San Helena to Calistoga, 29. That's another area for installing a rumble strip, and then on Calistoga, I think on the west side and the east side. So it's listed as should be in construction now. And then on the last page, there is a mitigation job. The CCA got extended, so it won't. We're targeting somewhere at the end of 2028 for that. And that concludes my report for Caltrans project update. Is there any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our Caltrans representative? Daniel? Not seeing any. Kate?
Yeah, I just wanted to announce a couple of road closures coming up. So it's an opportune time. State Route 29 Soskel Junction southbound single lane closure is scheduled for Wednesday today from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. 5 a.m. Thursday, and to complete the paving and to open the southbound lanes on the new overpass. Also, there's a number of closures on State Route 37, full highway closures on westbound State Route 37 between State Route 29 and State Route 121 on the weekend of April 19th and April 26th. Both closures will begin on Friday at 9 p.m. and reopen at 4 a.m. on the Monday following. Detours on State Route 12, 121, 29. I just, if you don't have to be out at night, don't. It's going to be busy. And they were also expecting full highway closures on State Route 37 eastbound on May 3rd and May 10th. Closures will start at 9 p.m. on the Fridays and will not open until 5 a.m. on the Mondays. And again, it's the same detour through 12, 121, 29. I just wanted to make sure
Those are very important. Thank you. Could you, if you've already sent it, do you mind resending that information out to all the?
Sure, I think
the board?
Emily has sent it out, but you want to send out the road closures again on State Route 37 and the ones on Soskel Junction tonight?
If you don't mind just resending it, if it's not too
Yes,
much
she'll
trouble.
go ahead and
Okay.
do that.
That'd be great. Thank you. I think we can try to help get that
Yeah,
information.
and it's always on our website too, if there's any questions.
Okay, perfect. Daniel, I have one question. The overpass improvement project at 29 in Yountville. Do we know when that's going to be complete?
Are you talking about Retreat Creek?
It's the overpass. It's right there at the
Yeah, it's the overpass
California
at California
in Yountville.
on 29.
On 29. There's been an overpass project and just kind of, I'm not sure how much progress has been made or if it's been kind of stalled. So do you have any information on the progress or the process?
Well, I need to know what the EA is, so maybe I'll send a message to Amani and get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Feel free to send it to NVTA staff and they can forward it to the board of directors here. On another note of that, I did talk to Amani last Friday at the ribbon cutting. There's been this long-standing, it's a minor thing, but it's not a minor thing. On that overpass, as you're going northbound, there's a sign that's probably at 30-degree angle-ish. It's a small white sign and it's kind of caught in the trees and it's recognizing the veterans home. And so I'll forward that on in an email, but we really want to be, recognizing our veterans with true honor. And that sign has kind of been an issue in past. So good opportunity to address that now as you're doing the rest of the overpass there. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Chair.
Oh, yes, I do have a question by Director Gregory.
Just a quick comment.
Comment.
I want to thank Kate and our staff here for connecting the owner of Hawthorne Suites to their representative at Caltrans, Amani. They weren't quite aware of what's coming with the Toluca Bridge replacement project. Weren't really in the loop. So we've got them connected. As that design progresses, it's a real tricky interface between the business and the improvement. So
Yeah.
I think all of us should keep an eye on that and help out that constituent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, because it's right there. So I appreciate that. Yes, and Vice Chair.
And on the subject of thanking Caltrans, at the facility ribbon cutting, we found out that Miani had helped us in American Canyon kind of get through some of the problems, getting a Caltrans permit so we could work on our Green Island Road. So I want to thank Caltrans for helping out there as well. And
All right,
That's
thank
not,
you.
thank you again. Thank you so much for being here and providing this update. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 10. This is a presentation. We only have one today. Is the NVTA project update. We are running a little behind, so Grant, if you don't mind, just
I'll
you
be
get to
quick.
go through this as swiftly and smoothly as you can, but we
No problem.
appreciate this update.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Alessio, Vice Chair Joseph, and directors of the board. My name is Grant Bailey. I'm the Program Manager Engineer at NVTA. This is the project update. Just a quick structure change. We'll be highlighting just a selection of projects and kind of rotating projects through as there are updates to cut down on repetition. So with that, next slide, please. Project we haven't talked about in about a year. If you recall back early in 2023, the board awarded a design contract to continue work for RSA to continue work on a bus stop improvement project. This project, so there's an existing bus stop at Napa Valley College. However, it really only services southbound. It is inefficiently services northbound and southbound trips. And so we're working with the college to expand this stop to provide service to northbound and southbound buses in a way that cuts down trip times individually by 10 minutes for each trip for northbound service, culminating in a 200-minute reduction on a daily basis to those northbound trips. You can see here on the right, this graphic shows the current circulation pattern. We have to do a loop going past the stop, going down James Demir Drive, and then circling back up onto 221. This project will allow us to cut that loop out and improve efficiency, and also allow us to clearly designate the northbound and southbound stops. We're currently working to release this contract for a contractor bid today. We'll collect bids in about 3 weeks, and I'll be looking to award this contract at the May board meeting. We're working with the city of Napa and the college to iron out some licensing agreements to ensure access to city-owned utilities adjacent to the stop. But that's really the only risk or issue that we have at this point. It's pre-construction costs to date or contract costs to get us through design are approximately $150,000, and total cost for construction, just the base contract is about $500,000 with $150,000 in construction support costs. Next slide, please. Just quick, kind of to orient you here, the photo on the left is an aerial image showing James Demere Drive with Highway 221 right there to the east of it. And then the upper right-hand photo shows a view from 221 looking at the existing stop. Kind of in the foreground of that picture is where the improvements will be located. Next slide, please. And then here's a plan view of the proposed improvements. We will add 2 bus pull-out bays or wedges. Those are the darker triangles you see there. Allows buses headed in northbound direction to pull into those bays and then pull right back out without having to reverse. We'll also be installing a crosswalk from the existing stop with a rectangular rapid flashing beacon to increase pedestrian awareness and visibility. There'll be speed tables on either side of this improvement as well to slow traffic as they approach this bus stop and thereby increasing pedestrian safety as well. There'll also be some minor site improvements, retaining wall, curb gutter, and sidewalk, as well as guardrail to protect pedestrians from Highway 221 traffic. Next slide, please.
I just wanted to say again that it has been another project that has been in the works for a very long time. And Dr. Powell and his team have been like just on top of stuff, and we're getting a lot of things done partnering with the college. So I just wanted to acknowledge them.
Could not agree more with Director Miller. Salsville Junction, high points for the update here. Director Miller already touched on, there will be closures starting at 9 a.m. tonight, single lane closures in the southbound direction as the contractor switches traffic from the current alignment shown there in the upper photo to the new southbound alignment, which this isn't perfectly constructed or complete yet, but you get the general idea. That's a picture being taken from the overcrossing structure and where the southbound traffic will be starting tomorrow morning. I heard today in the project progress meeting that there are a number of Swainson's hawks contemplating nesting in the area. There's only one that we really need to be concerned with, and Caltrans is working with California Department of Fish and Wildlife to determine buffers and what the potential impacts to construction will be, but the contractor is working quickly to button up any areas that may be adjacent to those nesting, those nests. Last thing I'll note, as we transition traffic from the current alignment southbound to the new alignment, it'll allow the contractor to punch through underneath the overcrossing structure and complete the roundabouts, as well as the remainder of the entrance and exit ramps to Highway 29 from surface streets. So we're starting to talk about a ribbon cutting. So it's tentatively scheduled for probably summer, probably late June or August. July ends up being a pretty busy month with other events going on. So be on the lookout for an invitation here in the near future to that event. Next slide, please. Our favorite project, the Vine Trail. So work resumed in this month with a couple of crews being on site. Here, the pictures shown here are around the Mill Creek area, Bale Grist. Contractors performing some grinding to get the trail down to the sub-base level, and they'll be building back up from there. And then in the lower photo, you see some storm drain infrastructure being installed. Earlier this month, the Hawks signal, the high intensity activated crosswalk beacon signals were completely signed off by the county and PG&E. They are scheduled to be energized in early May and June. So that's a pretty big milestone. There were a lot of questions around that one, so good to have that one behind us. But plenty of work to go. Moving forward, we'll be rough grading in remaining sections of reaches 1 and 2 south of Ellers, mostly between Ellers and Deer Park Road. We'll be installing trail barriers, metal beam guardrail, and concrete barrier, and working with property owners on the minor alterations necessary to accommodate the vine trail as it crosses each property frontage. We continue to run into archaeological artifacts as well as unknown conditions. Just, I think we've been back in construction in earnest for about 10 days now, and I think we've had about 10 new issues come up. So we're working through it, but I want to remain transparent to the board and let you know that it's highly likely that there will be another funding ask come before the end of construction. So next slide, please. And then finally, the last project I'll talk about this afternoon is the SR 29 American Canyon Corridor project. You may recall in January, we kicked this, the board awarded this project, awarded the project approval and environmental document phase to Kimley Horn. We kicked off that phase of work earlier this week with a kickoff meeting with the City of American Canyon, Caltrans, and our design consultants, mostly discussing initial activities, including data collection and public engagement. We'll be kind of really gearing up here over the next couple months as we start those public engagement events and furthering our studies to, obtain a draft environmental document that will let the project move forward into design. And next slide.
Excuse me. It's Q&A time.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to point out, could you bring that picture up again? A couple things. This is very crucial to American Canyon, particularly with the Watson Ranch development going on. This is going to be the access out of Watson Ranch. So with the number of houses being built there, I would really think a priority given to this location as the first effort for a roundabout. Some new news I have come across recently, they're called turbo roundabouts. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. And yeah, I'll see a smile on your face. Good. It has if you think of 3 concentric circles for traffic moving through, look at the map here, the picture here. This is north at the top, south at the bottom. Trucks are separated by a concrete lane separator. So they're on the outside one that they say pass through. The vehicles, cars, are in the middle one if they're going through. Then there's a notch. Google it and you'll find the pictures of it. The company does it. That's where the one who wants to turn left, go east. Or you're coming around the other way, you want to turn right, go west. So it keeps what it's intriguing to me is it keeps this traffic, seems to be well separated. And certainly if you're in a roundabout with a number of semi trucks going down 29, you don't want to be sharing a lane with them. So that would be a couple things I would offer. Maybe something to have a future presentation on the benefits of something such as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that added information and context. Thank you. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Frank.
And yeah, as we develop design and get a better understanding of what the constituents in American Canyon feel is best for the corridor, we're happy to present on that. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we add Director Williams?
Yes, thank you for the report. Regarding the Vine Trail and anticipating a consent item question, which asked for $115,000 additional allocation towards that. Can you tell us more about the discoveries or the obstacles, however we want to think about them, that are of archaeological significance that will justify, we're almost doubling the original allocation in the consent calendar item. And can you tell us more about them, about those discoveries?
And Director Williams, I'm wondering if maybe you might want to pull that consent item. Or I'll let, I don't know if that's, in terms of procedurally, if that's the best way to move forward. I mean, Grant, you're welcome to provide the answer, but then if it's a consent item, you might want to pull it. I don't know.
It may not be necessary to pull it.
Okay.
As we learn from Mr.
Okay.
Bailey.
Right. So I guess just a little background. Before the project was approved to go to construction, we were required by our environmental commitments to work with Middletown Rancheria, the local tribe, to observe any and all soil disturbance along the project. So we've been working with them throughout the project alignment. And then there are areas of known historic significance. They're called environmentally sensitive areas, ESAs. And in those areas, we have to work with Middletown and an archaeological consultant. We were aware of probably about a dozen ESAs throughout the project area. As we were working in those areas, we found that the artifacts of significance were found beyond the area limits, which have required us to perform additional studies, track those, and then we'll have our archaeologists work with the tribes to formalize those findings and log them in, I think, the California Historic Database. And, this isn't just one occurrence at one ESA. This is multiple ESAs to the point where we're connecting, an ESA here and an ESA here, and finding significant artifacts all the way throughout there. And the time to observe that, the additional artifacts, as well as work with the tribes to formalize the findings, report that, and log them, is the result of the additional ask in today's consent calendar.
And just for public information, what is an example of environmental and archaeological significant artifact? Is it human remains, or is it pottery, or?
No human remains. That would constitute like complete work stoppage for probably up to, 2 at least weeks, possibly more like 4. But we're finding lithic scatter, like obsidian flakes, and really, arrowheads, if you kind of want to get down to it, of various size and, work material, mostly obsidian. Also what are referred to as midden soils, which are effectively a dumping ground, but that contain, historically significant or archaeologically significant artifacts that, that I guess the tribes would wish to see undisturbed. And if they are disturbed, they have a process to repatriate those artifacts, and that's another part of this process as well.
So if repatriation is requested, is that included in this request for funds, or?
No, that actually occurs. The tribes handle that themselves, and so we are paying the tribes to do that work as part of their monitoring, and that is not part of this request, but it was it is included in part of previous requests to amend Middletown's contract for their work.
It would seem difficult. I'm just wondering how someone, how you or your staff or consultants estimate, assign an allocation for that kind of thing, because it's all underground and you just don't know what you're going to come up with, and yet you come up with some number. Can we feel fairly confident that this request, I'm on this item now, but can we feel fairly confident that this request will exhaust the likelihood of any further archaeological significant discoveries?
I will say that we are working with our consultants any way we can to ensure that their time is used most efficiently, and that we're getting, I guess, the most bang for our buck for every dollar that we spend out there for all of our consultants. So yes, I have a fairly high level of confidence that we will not be asking for an additional request for this specific consultant contract.
And I just want to add, I think the question is actually a very difficult and nearly impossible question. We've had, first people have habitated, this is their homeland for over 10,000 years, according to archaeological studies. So we're not the first here. This was well-established communities throughout the valley and very much significantly up valley. And this is a project that we're all behind. And I know this is impacting the cities and towns and your concerns. I don't think you want it to stop necessarily. We want to continue moving forward. And NVTA, I'm just going to speak out and please add to this, because this is just based on my limited knowledge. They're bound along, with this project between state and federal laws, and they have to, conform to those. And those are the delays, and that's the added bonus and the joy that Grant gets from this. It's actually, I think it's also very interesting and cool, and I'm really glad that those are in place. I know it costs time and money, but I think that we want to be respectful and honor those artifacts and those archaeological findings. So I just want to kind of add that too. And I don't know if our attorney, if we've crossed the line into this presentation to a consent item. I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly.
No, it was a project update, so
Okay, it applies. So we're
Yeah.
good. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Okay.
And I agree with your comments. I also do want to acknowledge that the challenges associated with identifying where we may encounter artifacts. And yes, it is extremely challenging and part of the reason why we're seeing these additional costs.
It seems like it would be really difficult to, allocate numbers on that. So I do understand that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Williams and Vice Chair Joseph.
The only comment I'd like to make, because I think this is a difficult issue to resolve, but from a pragmatic perspective, is there any way that we could continue doing this in some fashion so that at the end of the project, when it's done and you really can say this is all there is, then go back? Because I think it's, speaking as an elected official, the worst thing in the world is to keep approving change orders. And doing it once or twice is one thing, but if we do it 3 or 4 times, it just becomes very difficult and people get frustrated. So in my head, I'm thinking if there's some way that we could wrap this up and do one, ask to say, look, these are the reasons we went over, this is the total amount. After you say, yes, it's done, versus, the awkward situation of saying, okay, this should get us for now, and then we keep finding more stuff. So
Right.
Well, Director Joseph, I mean, I hear the frustration of many people on this project, and we too are frustrated, but I think the approach that we've used is more prudent, because otherwise we would have had to ask for a really big amount of money up front, not knowing what we were going to encounter. And if we had, done that might have been, we would be asking for more than what we need. And we can't come back after an accumulation of shortfall, because we need to keep the project going. We have to extend our contracts. So it is a kind of a problem, a catch-22, but I think Grant is doing the best that he can under some difficult circumstances. Had everything gone as planned, we wouldn't be here asking for 3, 4 times. Let's hope it's not 4 additional requests from our partners on this.
Yes.
And I think this is good practice for, although I don't think either supervisor is going to be on the board when the county does its segment between Yountville and St. Helena. It is just the nature of the project. And I know right now the city of Vallejo is doing its best to deliver the alignment between the ferry and to the southern point of American Canyon, and experiencing very similar things. So it really doesn't matter where the project is. It's just a very long project. It's not universally supported. And it's just hard. We had to do a lot of things. I appreciate the partnership with the Vine Trail, or this would never get done.
Okay. No, I understand. It's just, I'm just kind of channeling the frustration that I think we're going to experience as we go back.
If I may add, one thing that may simplify additional requests is finalizing a claim with PG&E. And if we were to be reimbursed for those costs, we could utilize that bucket of money or funding to supplement additional overages without having to go back to the jurisdictions. However, that would mean at the end of the project, less funding would be returned to the jurisdictions from that PG&E reimbursement.
That does represent kind of a glimmer of hope. So that's encouraging.
Thank you, Grant. I really appreciate all your hard work, and it's going to be worth it in the end. I know it's slow, painful, and in many ways, and expensive. I do think that we're still within contingency of the original contingency. Are we beyond the original contingency plan? We're beyond it. Okay, we're gonna see the nod on that. Okay. So yeah, let's hope the PG&E funding comes through, and then we can see what we can do about supporting our Up Valley partners on that. On the Swainson Hawk, I don't know if there's any discussion or opportunity, but maybe the South Saskell Junction needs to be called the Swainson Hawk Junction or overpass. And I say that kiddingly, but maybe not so kiddingly. And maybe the section of the Vine Trail can also be named in honor of the first people that were habited there. Okay, thank you. All right, we're behind, but that was very helpful. I'm going to move on to our consent agenda. There's 10 items, and through these items, again, you're going to see the time change, which is 11.2, starting at the 1 p.m. instead of 1:30. The applause for the notice of completion for the bus maintenance facility, some committee members reappointments, and I see some also the purchase of 2 paratransit vehicles, among other things. Do we have any items that anybody wants to pull, or do we have a motion and a second to accept?
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Okay,
I'll second, Joseph.
we have a motion by Garcia and a second by Joseph. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Not hearing any, that's unanimous. Moving to 12.1. This is the chair and vice chair nominating committee for fiscal year 2024-25. And this is an action item that the Napa Valley Transportation Authority needs to appoint a new chair and vice chair. I'll just say that I've learned a lot, and it's been a great honor to be chair. I will continue to be chair, I think, through May, and then the new chair starts in June or July,
No, you will be chair through the end of June,
through the end of
and
June.
then the fiscal
Okay.
year starts on July 1st.
It's been really great. It's been an honor. And our vice chair has been excellent. I'm so thankful you've been our vice chair. And you just bring so many skills forward. So I would like to make a nomination to nominate our vice.
Actually,
No?
the item is so that you will convene a committee to
Oh,
nominate a chair and identify a vice chair. So
Oh,
typically in
I
the past,
misunderstood.
our committees have been the current chair and the immediate 2 chairs.
Mhm.
Our most immediate chair is Director Pedrosa. And our other most immediate chair is Chris Canning, who's no longer on the board. And we believe, looking at who has been served as chair, the other person would be Director Garcia.
So I will admit that I jumped ahead and I had a meeting with Director Pedrosa and Director Garcia about this item. And so we've already had discussion and met on this. Do we need to change the,
So I think you would need to come back next month and nominate your chair and vice chair at that time, because this item is to appoint a committee to discuss. And I could be wrong, but.
It's correct. It's not agendized for the
I
nomination.
didn't
So, yeah.
read it well enough. Okay,
So, yeah, so in May, we can have it agendized for nomination.
okay, very good. Then it'll be very easy to bring this back. Do we have a motion? Well, first of
Chair.
all, do we have any questions? Yes.
There is an alternative. There is an
Director
alternative that
Sedgley.
you come back and nominate. I don't know that we necessarily need to appoint a subcommittee to make the nominations. There is an alternative just to nominate, move people up. So that's an option. It's in the staff pack. There is an alternative to do that, so. If you want a subcommittee to do it, I'm fine with that, but you can also
Just,
go the alternative route.
I'd go based on the agenda language, and it specifically references the nominating committee for the fiscal year, so it doesn't say the nomination. So I'd defer it to the May agenda where we would agendize it as nominate a chair for fiscal year 24-25.
Okay, very good. So is that something I can do? I can nominate that Director Pedrosa and Director Garcia join me in this committee?
Yeah, on this item, yeah.
Okay.
Today, yes.
Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and make that nomination, but first I want to hear if there's any other comments or questions by the chair, by the board. Laura, do you have anything? No, okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? Not in the board. How about online?
We do not.
We don't. Okay, do we have a motion to approve that nomination?
I'll make the motion to appoint a nominating committee of Director Pedrosa, Director Alessio, and Director Garcia.
Thank you. And second by Gregory. So a motion by Joseph, second by Gregory. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? No nays? Okay, that's unanimous then.
Could we meet at 12:55? Since we can see full board meets at 4 o'clock, because it's going to take about 5 minutes to do that.
We're going to keep it a one. It's simple. As we can see, simple things can sometimes trip us up. Moving on to 12.2, which is also an action item, and this is resolution 24-06, adopting the Napa Valley Transportation Authority biannual budget for fiscal years 2024-25 and 25-26. And Antonio Honorado will walk us through this. And again, I hate to press on time, but I know we have a couple members that will have to leave at 3:30, that we will keep a quorum. And so please go ahead with this presentation.
Yeah, I'll make this brief. So good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the board. My name is Antonio Honorado, and I am the Director of Finance and Administration for NVTA. So for this item, staff is asking the board to adopt the biennial budget for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority for the fiscal year 24-25 in the consolidated budgeted amount of $52,083,700 and approve the fiscal year 25 appropriation of the above said amount, as well as the fiscal year 25-26 annual operating budget of $28,989,500 and approve the appropriation limit of the above said amount. So as you recall from the March meeting, a public hearing was held for the first reading of the biennial budget. Since then, just a few minor modifications were made to the budget, to the transit budget only, resulting in a small increase of costs of about $128,900, which represents less than 1% of the overall initial budget. The increase to the transit budget was mainly due to some minor service changes, updating some service hours to some of our Valley Transit systems based on if there was increased demand. But as I said, there was the changes only represented less than 1% of the total overall budget, the net increase. Director McKee-Cant had a question about some of the fare box revenues as well as some of the other revenues. I did take a look at those and made some minor changes, but it didn't change at all the overall revenue picture for the transit budget itself. For the general fund, there was no changes to the initial budget, as well as the debt service fund and transportation for clean air. There was no changes to those budgets from the first reading. I will emphasize that, we do have that special projects budget, and the approval today only represents a spending authority. It does not represent contracting authority. When those special projects do progress to a point when we do ask the board, we will have agreements and contracts that will ask the board to execute based on those special projects and where they are with those resources, and we're ready to move forward with them. As I mentioned, there are no other changes to the budget. We didn't receive any comments to the budgets. And so that concludes my report, and I'll ask you to adopt the biennial budget for the upcoming biennial budget cycle.
Thank you, Antonio. Appreciate that. Any questions by the directors? Not seeing any? No? Do we have any public comment? Not in the board online? No? Okay, very good. Do we have a motion and a second then?
I'll move that we approve the biennial budget.
Okay, we have a motion by Joseph and a second by Shuto. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, very good. That passed unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 12.3. This will be presented by Diana Meehan, and this is also an action item, and this is the Transportation Development Act, call for projects and program guidelines approval.
Good afternoon, Chair Alessio, MBTA board members. I'm Diana Meehan. This is item 12.3, Transportation Development Act, Article 3, or we call TDA 3, Call for Projects and Approval of Program Guidelines. And the TDA 3 program is funded by approximately 2% of a quarter-cent statewide sales tax. NVTA receives sales tax generated in Napa County. It's about $165,000 annually. TDA 3 program funds local bicycle and pedestrian projects, and all jurisdictions are allowed to apply for these funds. The funds are not retained by NVTA, but passed directly through to the jurisdiction project sponsors. And funds that are not utilized are rolled over for future cycles of the funding program. As of March 2024, there is approximately 239,000 for fiscal year 24-25, and based on historic revenues, there's an additional 330,000 available for the outer years of 2025, 26, and 26, 27. We like to do this in 3-year cycles, simplifies the process for us and reduces staff time to do that. MTC has recently updated its guidelines, and we updated our guidelines to sync with those. One of the recent additions to the guidelines was to add a different project type or a new project type, which is called quick build project types. And quick builds are interim capital infrastructure projects that typically use lower cost materials, durable materials that last from 1 to 5 years and allow moderate design flexibility and allow community benefits to be quickly achieved. We feel that this is fitting for new developments under our Vision Zero plan and local roadway safety plans, and are looking for, even though this is a 3-year funding cycle, looking to recommend that we prioritize quick build projects in the first year of this cycle. And this did go before the Technical Advisory Committee as well as the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and they did approve that. Or recommend that the board approve the opening of the call for projects and accept those guidelines. With that, project applications, if you open the call today, will be due on Friday, May the 31st. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the program.
Thank you, Diana, very much. Do we have any questions? Yes, Director
Just my
Doring.
clarification, is it correct to state that the quick build projects are limited to a $50,000 maximum?
Yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at. That's a pretty standard, given the nature of the type of materials that are used for those projects. The goal is that this allows flexibility, and we hear oftentimes, as I'm sure you do, there's a lot of planning going on, but we're not seeing those projects get on the ground. But you know, oftentimes before you make a large infrastructure investment, it's good to demonstrate what these projects, how they might function, and make those tweaks as needed. And that's sort of the nature of a quick build.
I'll just throw this out there. Do you have any sense of whether a replacement of pavers in our downtown sidewalk in St. Helena would be considered a quick build, short term?
It doesn't
It's
sound like
short
a quick
term. I think it's
those types of projects are particularly expensive usually.
well, actually,
Yeah.
I know it's more than $50,000. I'm just wondering, obviously I'd be the matching fund. I'm just asking.
I mean, it is, you know, if you're asking if it would be fundable under TDA 3, yes, it would be because it is a pedestrian project.
All dollars count. Thank you.
Good try. You have to ask otherwise. Director Williams.
Thank you. Are the public works departments up and down the county, are they aware of this?
Yes, they are.
They are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you already getting a few small requests?
Well, today we would be opening the call for projects today.
Yeah.
That's the request of the board.
Perfect. Okay. Well, this is an action item. Is there any public comment? Not in the boardroom, but on the line? No? Okay. So with that being said, if we don't have any other questions during, Director Doring, did you want to make a motion?
I'll move approval of the staff recommendation.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Doring and a second by McKee-Cant. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any nays? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. We are at 12.4. This is an action to accept and file the countywide transportation plan performance metrics, and Danielle Schmidt will provide this presentation. You can find this in your packets on pages 130 through 233.
Good afternoon, Chair Alessio, members of the board. Danielle Schmitz here to present item 12.4, the countywide transportation plan performance metrics mid-plan review. And I'm actually joined by Michael Baker International. Justin Feek is online and will provide an overview of the performance metrics. But just to remind the board of what this study is illuminating is NVTA is responsible for completing the countywide transportation plan, which is the long-range 25-year transportation plan we complete every 4 years. The last time we completed the transportation plan was in May of 2021, and the board actually approved performance metrics for the first time. And the idea behind the performance metrics is there was goals and objectives set by this body, and really to gauge our progress in meeting the performance metrics within the 4-year term of the next countywide transportation plan. We're doing this interim kind of performance metrics review. And so Justin Feek is online with Michael Baker, and he will provide an overview of what the performance metrics, what we have found, progress towards the performance metrics and goals and objectives have been. And then what this study will inform our next iteration of the countywide transportation plan, which we will be kicking off later this year in 2024. And it will be a year-long planning process because, again, it includes all of our projects and our programs and goals and funding for the next 25 years for the transportation network. So welcome, Justin, and I believe he's joined by Caleb Carpenter, another planner at Michael Baker, and take it away.
Good afternoon, NVTA board. Can you see my screen, hopefully? I'm having a little bit of an issue sharing my PowerPoint.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, and when I hit forward, can you see the slides move forward?
Well,
It's not in presentation mode, Justin, so maybe if you put it in slide view.
Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
there you go.
now
All
we're
right,
set.
thank you. Apologize for that. And thank you, NVTA board, for having me today. And thank you, Danielle, for the great introduction to the project. For sake of time, I'm just going to kind of breeze through these slides. I think Danielle gave a great overview of the overall goals and objectives of the project, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. This overall effort started off back in June of, yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Just one moment. I'm having a technical glitch. I got to replace the screen so everyone can see it here in the boardroom.
Okay,
One second,
no worries.
Justin.
Go ahead and share your screen again.
Oh,
Okay.
hi, Justin. We
Oh,
see you
hello.
now.
Let's see here.
It was there. It was just in the corner to enlarge it.
It's something I clicked.
Hopefully you're able to see my screen now. Well,
Not yet. We're working on it. We'll get it back up here in just a second. We
looks
see it.
great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Please reconvene. Thank you.
We can
Okay.
see it now.
okay, awesome. Just moving along here. So the project schedule for the performance metrics update, we started this overall effort back in June of 2023. As you can see here, we have had several technical advisory committee meetings where we got input from NVTA staff and NVTA member agencies throughout development of this overall report and progress report project. And then today we're at our final board presentation to wrap up the project. Won't get into all the members, but like I mentioned, we did have a TAC that was very involved throughout development of this study, going through the data and the performance metrics with us. Overall, we looked at 14 unique performance metrics for Napa County. And those performance metrics that have a check mark next to them are basically the performance metrics where the region or the county met or exceeded its targets defined in the CTP 2021. So, and I should say that most of the trends that we saw were in alignment with California trends and national trends. So there wasn't really anything alarming there, just as a caveat to what I'm about to get into. So I know there's a lot of information here, but the first metric that we're going to touch on is households below the county median income that are within a quarter mile of transit. The key takeaway here is that the baseline performance metric from CTP 2021 was that 85% of below median income households would have access to transit, and the overall target is 100% of households. The overall region did experience a slight decrease in accessibility to transit within a quarter mile, went from 85% to 83%, as you can see there. But honestly, even though this target wasn't met, I think that's pretty good considering all the impacts of COVID. You'll see a recurring theme here that COVID did a number on transit operations. I think that's probably not surprising to most folks in the audience. The other thing I wanted to mention is I think this is a testament to the, unfortunately, NVTA had to do some service cuts, but it looks like they did a lot of them in the right places without impacting underserved communities. So even though the metric was not met, I think there's an indication of a very well thought out service plan and reactions to COVID. Moving into the next performance metric, this one is around transportation safety, which is an important topic for all of us. The baseline from the CTP itself was 48 fatal collisions and 291 severe injury collisions. Many members of this group are probably aware of the Vision Zero efforts at NVTA that set a target of 0 fatal collisions and 0 severe injury collisions. Overall, the county did improve within in the severe injuries categories. You can see there was a decrease of 7% of severe injury collisions, but unfortunately there was an increase of 33% in fatalities. And like I mentioned before, that this is kind of in alignment, unfortunately, with California and national trends where we did see a lot more crashes and fatalities in general due to COVID. I could get into that in a lot more detail, but you are in kind of in lockstep with that. But if you average the total fatalities and the severe injuries together, Napa County actually did experience a 1% decrease in overall fatal and serious injury crashes. So there was a reduction there, but nowhere near the 0 target, which is very aspirational to a degree and may not be meetable. But there's a lot of efforts going on, like that Vision Zero plan, that are helping the region keep the eye on the ball and continue making progress in this metric area. Getting into congestion a little bit, I know it was talked about earlier today with some of the taxes and revenues. So the overall CTP 2021 baseline performance measurement was a peak period delay index of 3.71. And I should say that for most people, that's probably a fairly technical term. Basically, anything above a 1 is a multiplier. So if you have a peak period delay index of 2.0, that basically means it's going to take you twice as long to get through a roadway segment or an intersection, just as a point of reference. So the baseline from the original CTP was 3.71. The target was to have all segments of roadway be at or below a 2.0. And as you can see in this graphic, there are no segments of roadway within Napa County that are above a 2.0. So basically, the county as a whole did meet this metric. And to a degree, I think it can be attributed to COVID and people traveling less due to stay-at-home orders and other reasons. But nonetheless, they did meet the metric, and I think it's a good thing to continue monitoring this going forward as we kind of experience the new normal, as a lot of folks like to say. Getting into average weekday hours of delay, another performance metric, baseline metric from the CTP 21 was 3,108 daily person hours of delay during weekdays. The overall target was to reduce that number, and unfortunately, the average weekday hours of delay did go up by about 6.7%. So this metric was not met, but there is a caveat to this in the sense that we do believe that maybe the overall baseline from the CTP 21 may be a little bit low because it was taken right kind of during the heart of the pandemic when people were traveling the least. And then the CTP update data, which leads to that 6.7% increase, was basically taken as we were kind of coming out of COVID and folks were starting to travel more. So this is another one where we probably should monitor it in the future and just see how things are under the new normal. But unfortunately, with COVID, this metric was not met. Getting into on-time bus performance weighted by ridership. I think most of you in the region realize that and know that transit was very adversely impacted by COVID, and really it's not anything that's within the control of NVTA or the member agencies, but the CTP baseline performance metric was 69% of all trips, city routes, intercity routes, and regional routes being on time for performance. And the target is to go to 90% average weight of on-time performance. And unfortunately, due to a couple different things related to COVID, like drivers calling in sick and reduction in service because of COVID in general, the overall on-time performance metric went from 69% to 56.33%. And obviously that's below the 90% target. But there has been a lot of great new developments as of late. I think as most are aware, a lot of the fixed route services being reinstated and some of those challenges with personnel calling in sick during COVID have kind of abated. So I think we're going to see this performance metric normalize and improve as we move into the future. But kind of the recurring theme is now that COVID is in the rearview mirror, at least I hope it is, it's good to continue monitoring these things moving forward to see how the new normal impacts the metric. Success story here. So the V-Commute program and Napa Valley Forward program, the overall metric, baseline metric, I'll call it, from the CTP was 132 V-Commute users and 150 Napa Valley Forward users. There's a little bit different change in this metric in that both of those programs have been combined now, and the overall target was to increase users. As you can see here, we went from 282 combined users to 975, which is a 246% increase. To a degree, we talked through this with NVTA technical personnel. We think that maybe this metric should be changed to track active users in the future, because the current target is 500 active users. And I think the agency and the region is moving towards that, but I think it would be something more valuable potentially to measure in the future to keep track of these travel demand management programs and how successful they are. Getting into overall truck travel time reliability, the baseline from the CTP was 2.39. I know these are technical terms, and the target was to stay at 2.39 or reduce. As you can see here in the green, over the past several years, and partially as the result of COVID, there was a lot less travel within Napa Valley and in the region. And basically every year that the truck travel time reliability index was below the target of 2.39. Therefore, this metric target was achieved. And it's kind of that recurring theme again of less cars on the road, less congestion due to COVID. That might have been some of the reasoning behind it, in addition to a lot of the really great efforts in the region to improve the transit system and reduce congestion. But the same recurring theme, this should probably be tracked moving forward to see if the truck travel time reliability does stay status quo or increase or diminish as we move into the new normal. Getting into number of jobs accessible by transit within 1 hour during the morning commute. This metric target was not met. The overall goal was to increase the number of jobs accessible via transit within 1 hour. As you can see here, most jurisdictions did see an increase in jobs accessible, but there was only one that saw a decrease. And really a lot of that is related to just demographic and socioeconomic shifts of locations of jobs within the region. That's what we pinned it to. And I think this is another one, just continue monitoring it. And then this could give some insight into some route changes to better serve folks to get to their jobs in the AM and PM hours in the future. Getting into greenhouse gas emissions, this is a success story, maybe partially contributed to COVID, but there's also been a lot of great efforts to bring additional electrical vehicle charging stations and things of that nature to the region that are keeping people from using fossil fuel burning vehicles. And then also just COVID in general, people were traveling less, but the overall baseline performance metric from the CTP was 1.5 metric tons from 2015 of greenhouse gas emissions. And the target was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 19%. As you can see here, between 2015 and 2022, we went from 1.5 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions to 1.2 metric tons, which is a 20% decrease in emissions, which does meet that 19% reduction target. Getting into vehicle miles traveled, this kind of goes hand in hand with that previous metric. At the time of CTP adoption, folks in Napa County were traveling about 17.29 miles per capita. As a result of COVID, transit, and some of those people using bike ped and things like that, there was a reduction of from 17.29 miles per capita to 14.27 miles per capita per day, which is a 17.5% decrease in per capita miles traveled, and that does exceed the target from the CTP of a 15% reduction. Therefore, this metric was met at the regional level. Getting into mode share a little bit. So there's been a big push, as we all know, within Napa County to prioritize alternative modes of transportation. At the time of CTP adoption, about 5% of all trips, commute trips, I should clarify, were made by bicycling and walking. And the overall goal is to have 10% of commute trips completed by biking and walking by 2045. Unfortunately, there was a 1% reduction in overall trips made, commute trips made by biking and walking between the CTP adoption and this mid-plan update went from 5% total to about 4%. So 1% reduction. Therefore, this target was not met. And then annual transit ridership, this goes hand in hand with some of the ones I talked about earlier. COVID did do a number on transit service. As I think we all know, there was a lot of reduction in fixed route service due to revenues and demand. So to a degree, that's probably why this metric was not met. But overall ridership between 2018 and 2019 was 1,039,462 riders. And that did go down to 413,166 riders during the heart of COVID, which is when the CTP update data actually came from, which was a 60.25% decrease, and is not maintaining or increasing from the baseline annual ridership. Therefore, this metric target was not met. Although this metric is moving in the right direction as of late. As we know, there's been restoration of a lot of fixed route transit. And then some of those other issues that were making it hard to be on time are being alleviated through the efforts of NVTA, and to their credit. Getting into miles between bus road calls, the average miles between bus road calls at CTP adoption was 42,750. That did reduce to 38,873, and the target was to improve the average number of miles between road calls. This is a metric where it's better to have a higher number, because the more miles you have between road calls, the less time your buses are spending in the shop. So this metric was not met, but there are a lot of late breaking or new efforts that have been undertaken by NVTA, like purchasing a lot of new vehicles to modernize the fleet, which will help this metric. And then also the new bus maintenance facility is going to allow NVTA to utilize electric buses to a fuller degree, which is going to help this metric as well. So I think if we were to revisit this probably in a year or so, or even use more up-to-date data that wasn't available to us, this would probably be trending in the right direction. Pavement condition index, this is one where the metric was not met, unfortunately. The reason for that was inclement weather and funding challenges that have been discussed to a degree today, even, which I can appreciate. The overall PCI score, pavement condition index score, as part of the CTP that was adopted, was 58. And as of our latest data poll, that went down to a pavement condition index of 54, which is not an improvement, which the target calls for. Therefore, this target metric is not met. But there are a few things that are being done, like being able to bond against future revenues and everything to invest in pavement, amongst some of the other things that were talked about earlier during the meeting today. So I think this is definitely something that is in the crosshairs and is being addressed at the regional level, which is good. And then finally, next steps for the project. Hopefully, the NVTA board members, you got a chance to look at fact sheets that are circulating around. There is a performance metrics report that is out there circulating. Hopefully all of you get a chance to take a look at it, and we're open to comments if you have any. And then finally, I think the most important thing is that, even though this was a mid-plan review, the NVTA is going to be kicking off their new countywide transportation plan update in fall of 2024. And that's when these metrics will be looked at again, and there'll probably be more robust discussions about how these metrics could drive programming decisions and utilizing funding in a fiscally constrained environment to move the performance needle in all these metric areas. So it's definitely not the end of the conversation. And I commend the region for setting performance metrics and tracking progress, because if you don't track progress, then you don't know how you're doing. So it's really great to see NVTA doing this type of work. And then finally, I know I was rushed there. Hope I didn't go too fast. Any questions or comments? We're at a time where we can take those.
Justin, thank you very much for that presentation. You did a great job going through it. Very helpful information, not always the best information, in terms of based on that timing, the metrics are accounted for and presented, but it's helpful to know where we are. And so I'm going to open this up for any questions. I see Vice Chair.
Just a quick comment. Number one, I got a chance to review the document, and it's good analysis, good suggestions as far as tweaking some of the metrics. But because COVID seemed to have been such a big impact, sometimes good, sometimes bad, my question is, how often will we be updating these metrics, or is it going to be blended into something that staff does on an ongoing basis? I guess I'm trying to get a handle on what are the next steps? What's the next process?
So I can handle or take that question. So the next steps would be, as Justin mentioned, this is a good kind of like barometer of like where we're at. And from this, we have a list of suggested kind of tweaks, as you mentioned, to some of the metrics. For instance, I think what we would come back to the board with in fall is this is an update to the countywide transportation plan. These are the goals and objectives identified in the countywide transportation plan. And these are the performance metrics that we're measuring our progress towards these goals and objectives. And staff will have suggested tweaks. And I think at that time, the board can have a discussion about the goals and objectives, whether they agree with them or would like to keep them the same. And then we could go from there on suggested tweaks. So an example is for the travel demand management, which is the V-Commute program. Right now, we have number of users enrolled in the V-Commute program. We would like to change it to active users to really show engagement with that program. I think another example is changing the bicycle and pedestrian mode share. Right now, it's just looking at commute. And we know from the pandemic that a lot of trips have changed to alternative modes of transportation that might not be in commute time, the commute timeframes. People are just going to the grocery store or recreating on a bike. And so changing that kind of measure, I think, could help meet some of these performance targets. And so we will go through a whole process with the board. But as Justin mentioned, if we don't know, we set these targets almost 4 years ago and the baseline targets. And if we don't know kind of how we're moving the needle or not moving the needle towards these metrics, then we don't really know where to go when we start the countywide transportation plan.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And I agree. We got to measure our progress, or we don't know if we're doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any. And again, this is a action item. So do we have a motion to accept the action item to accept and file?
Move to accept and file, Garcia.
Okay, motion by Garcia,
Second by Williams.
second by Williams. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, very good. All in favor then. And so that was unanimous. And just so everybody knows, we are at the limit. We can't lose any other directors or we'll be out of quorum. So we'll just hang in there. We only have like one more action item, and that's 12.5 federal and state legislative update by Executive Director Kate Miller.
I am going to, if okay with you, just dispense with the overview. It really doesn't add much to the presentation and just go directly to the action item, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the action item is about SB 1031, which is the Wiener Wahab bill that was mentioned by Director Pedrosa. This is a potentially will be a sales tax, or not a sales tax, but a measure that we put on the 9 Bay Area counties agendas for the November 2026 election. It would raise between $1 to $1.5 billion each year. It really is about transit transformation, although there's some flexibility within that. About $750 million is proposed to go directly to address transit transformation. There is another 25% of it will go to safe streets. And then there is also 15% flexibility. There is a 70% return to source target. So if we are meeting the transit performance requirements that MTC will establish, then we can use the flexible funds for other purposes. The only thing I would add to that is that on your bill matrix, we had, staff had recommended a support if amended. A new bill was released last night, a new version of it, and we are supportive of it at this point, or at least staff believes that there was a couple changes that made us a lot more comfortable. Key in that is the return to source element. So with that, staff is recommending that the board just take an approve or a support action instead of the original support, if amended. So that concludes my
Okay.
report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that update. Any questions by the board? Not seeing any online? Any public comment? Not seeing any. Very good. Do we have a motion to approve this item?
I'll make a
Wait a second.
motion that, I'll make the motion that we, on item SB 1031, that we go from watch to support.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Eisenberg. We have to be fast around here. You just can't be polite. You just have to jump right in. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Excellent. So that is also passed unanimously. Thank you. Any future agenda items? Do I see anybody request anything? Not seeing any. Then we'll pass on that. And so we're going to adjourn this meeting at 3:38. And again, as just a reminder, which one will be emailed to you also, is our next meeting is that fourth Wednesday instead of third Wednesday, May 22nd at 1 p.m. Please, please, please RSVP as soon as you receive that, just for our staff that works hard. I've been in that position. It's really hard to chase down board members. And also if you need to arrive late or depart early, please let staff know that too. So we're always in quorum. Yes,
Just a thought on that date. It is Bottle Rock weekend, so people want to know that traffic around here might be a little congested.
that's on Wednesday, the 22nd. So maybe with the construction.
Construction and
Okay, that's a good point.
looky-loos starting to happen.
That's true. I see them building the stages. I'm like,
know.
I look.
Motorhomes coming in. all of it,
I
all of
looked.
it.
All right, thank you for noting that. I appreciate that. If staff thinks that we have to do anything different in terms of parking because of the preparation for Bottle Rock the 2 days later, please let us know. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, so we are